All right. So welcome everyone. My name is Gautam Chhugani. I'm the managing director at Sanford Bernstein, covering global digital assets. I have with me Vasa. His full name is knows him as Vasa on Twitter. So it's Vaibhav Saini. Vasa is the uh, co-founder of Gem, which was recently acquired by OpenSea. Vasa has been a fairly known developer in the market in crypto, and has actually been working on DeFi NFTs for a long time. So it's not surprising that he's built this amazing product at Gem. So with that, Vasa, thanks for doing this, and tell us a bit about your sort of personal evolution in terms of how you ended up from starting with, how from DeFi to kind of moving on to NFTs and then sort of building Gem. Uh,
Yeah, so it has been a fun ride. I guess it started in mid 2020, I guess. So in mid 2020, I was working with Protocol Labs as a open source developer, just working on some grants and all. And I've been having all these side projects since the start. So I was working on one of my side projects called DAppKit, which is basically a toolkit for Web3 developers. So while I was working on that, I basically wanted to know what kind of tools people might want to build, and that's how I started looking into what people are building in Web3 space in mid 2020, and that's where I got a start into DeFi. So I started looking into DeFi stuff, mostly into curve finance, beyond finance, and general stuff. Unfortunately, I sort of got sucked into it, and yeah, just started working with different DeFi protocols, participate in lot of these white hacks that were happening at that time. So contributed a lot to that news, and just investigating a lot of these hacks, and basically just contributing to most of these protocols which were based on a pool kind of mechanism. So just aggregating yield at that time. So while I was working on that, I just tried to check out the space in terms of what you can do with uh, in general ERC20 tokens. And I guess in starting of 2021, NFTs started to take off again, after 2017 or late 2018. So one thing that I realized while I was comparing normal tokens with NFTs was that with normal tokens, you can't build that much in terms of the only property you can define is just the price, right? But so the products that you can build are very limited in terms of you can have an exchange like Uniswap, and then maybe some lending protocols like Compound Aave, and then all the stuff that you can build other than that, the number of users sort of start to decline because those are quite complex products. So that could be some yield aggregators, or it could be more complex products like future options, and all kinds of those derivatives. Now, when you compare this with NFTs, it's much more bigger design space because you can not only attach the price to it, but also any kind of attributes to it. So the problem itself, because you can basically define anything on the NFTs, the problem space increases a lot. So there's a lot of more things to work on when it comes to NFTs. And at that time in the space, I guess not a lot of was built. So I just started looking around, working with NFTX and FT20, just helping them out on the smart contract side. And while I was working on that, I just thought that why don't I arbitrage the difference between prices of NFTs on these on-chain exchanges like NFTX and FT20. So while I was doing that, Adam from FT20 basically said that why don't you hook up OpenSea into it? And that made me realize that why don't I add more and more markets to it, and that's how I basically built the post version of aggregator, using the contributions from Gitcoin. So yeah, that's how we got into the aggregative space.
yeah, I mean, that's interesting, right? So, Vasa, one question that arises here, right? Given, and now obviously you're part of OpenSea, but back then, when you saw the market share of OpenSea, it's obviously a very dominant market share on
Yeah.
Ethereum. in terms of, at least that's where most of the NFT activity was back then. Now, of course, it's gone to other chains. And when you kind of saw that, it sounds like there was not much aggregation there, right? Because it was mostly happening on OpenSea. But what were sort of the big product features that you saw missing in OpenSea, right? Why would people try to use you versus OpenSea? Because the features that you can build, OpenSea can build themselves. And so what was preventing them from adding those features versus you creating this entire category of a product, which is now what we call as aggregator?
Yeah, like to be honest, like when we started, we never had an idea that like it would like actually become something that
Because it
it's
seems
today.
like you added a lot of product features that people appreciate.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So like when we started, like it was more of a protocol which sort of looks like pseudo swap today. So like it started as a like any to any swap. So like you can basically start with any number of tokens that could be maybe NFTs plus ERC20s, and like you can exchange it for any number of ERC20s plus NFTs. But as we like started to like roll this out to people, and like when people started to use it, we realized that okay, like one of the things that people liked a lot was basically to buy a lot of stuff like in one transaction. So like that's where like this VPN concept like started to came in. So that was like the first thing that got people hooked. So when we started like thinking more about like what makes the marketplace valuable, and like it's like sort of a general concept, and this is something that I've like realized over the time. Like there's like three different things that make a marketplace like effective. So that's one thing is selection. So like what's the order liquidity that you have on the marketplace? Second is convenience, like how convenient it is to do anything on your market, like buying, selling, or whatever. And third thing is the cost. So like whatever operations you do, buy, sell, or whatever, what's the cost to like get that done? So that's one of the things that you can like use to basically, even if you want to uh, sort of compete with a marketplace, like you can try and like dial into like these three parameters and like try and improve this. So in terms of like how we sort of got into this play was as an aggregator, the thing is that like you don't have that much. If you don't have that much volume, like it's very hard because like aggregators by default is like very thin margin business. So our initial idea was to like just go ahead and like create some utility around the product, and like then it's much more easier because like once you start with an aggregator model, like in terms of like these three concepts that I described, like first is selection. So like with aggregator, selection is very easy because like you are aggregating not only from OpenSea but like all the new marketplaces that might come ahead. So like that was one of the bets that we made that okay, like going forward, like there will be some new marketplaces because if there's like enough money in this space, like of course, like other people will try to come into this space. And second thing is convenience. So yeah, this is where the aggregators are like they basically play on the convenience side, so that like you don't have to check different deals or prices like on multiple marketplaces. So yeah, that's like the core proposition of any aggregator. And the third thing is cost. So cost is something that we have tried to improve as we went forward. So initial version that we built was not as efficient as it could be in terms of the gas cost, but like the version 2, version 3, and whatever versions that we made as we went forward, like we came to a point where a transaction using Gem was even cheaper than like buying directly from OpenSea. So like we tried to get to these three different points, and eventually our idea was to just yeah, like try to create our own marketplace layer and just aggregate it as a separate marketplace, and uh, just basically turn that aggregator into like a marketplace in some sense while still keeping the aggregator layer. So like you can generate the revenue from the marketplace layer, but yeah, you can still keep the utility. So that was the core idea, I guess, back then.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. And on that note, around liquidity of NFTs, I had a question, which is, when you kind of look at NFT liquidity today and you compare that to obviously fungible token liquidity, which is the ERC20 or equivalent tokens, there's a huge difference, right? Where whenever you try to buy, you have to pay the price. But when you try to sell, you have to, obviously the bots are making those offers, right? And those offers are significantly lower than what what the current floor price is per se. So that gap is what I would describe as inefficiency in the market, right? And somebody is trying to exploit that inefficiency by actually giving people immediate liquidity at a big discount, and that discount is very significant. What do you think can a marketplace aggregator do, or now that you're thinking about this NFT liquidity problem, can do to actually improve the liquidity of NFTs, just like tokens are in the long run? How do you see the NFT liquidity kind of evolving going forward?
Yeah, like there's a couple of ways to do it. I guess like the biggest thing is the information fragmentation that you have in terms of the thing is that like a lot of stuff is quite fragmented exchanges and off-chain exchanges. So like most of the people just know, they just go to the interface, and like a lot of times like there are cheaper assets on like X2I2, Lookster, SudoSwap, or any other exchange. So that's one of the things that like most of the retail people miss. So like that's like one of the simplest things an aggregator can do, where just providing a global liquidity pool, and like just have, because you can have a simple chart like if you have like on centralized exchanges where you have like the buy side and the sell side and different depths. So like that's something that we can start with. But the thing is that on like singular marketplaces you can't do much. But like by additionally adding like more and more marketplaces, like you'll eventually get to a point where you can basically route the orders like through any marketplace, and like as a user you don't need to care about where my order liquidity is going through and like how much it might charge me, because like whatever deal you'll get will be the cheapest. And apart from that, I guess like there's a lot of different tools that are coming in, or like I'm not sure if they would directly affect the liquidity, but in terms of like there's like couple of things in terms of like second like more complex products like buy now pay later, or like some loan based products, and like that might increase the liquidity in terms of providing some sort of capital to the user, so that like they don't have to pay the full amount at once. That might increase the liquidity, but like that might be a second hand effect rather than a first degree effect.
Understood. And I have another sort of contentious question related to this, general improvement in the efficiency of NFT markets, right? So, when you kind of look at the NFT market structure, obviously you have OpenSea, you have in some degree, you have some of the other dexes which are trying to make a play in NFTs. So you have Joe on the, Trader Joe on the Avalanche exchange launching an NFT. Uniswap to some extent has been interested in NFTs because their LP token is in the form of NFT. So in that sense, when you kind of see the role of an aggregator, right, it is to actually improve the broader competitiveness and efficiency in the market. Obviously, you had Looks, which was also kind of launched around the beginning of this year, so on and so forth. So, at some point, I thought that, and this question is a bit contentious, I thought that products like yours would actually create more efficiency in the market, right? And it would help balance the power between different exchanges so that people list in multiple exchanges. And because people are not going to the interface of the exchange, for example, OpenSea directly, they would come to your interface, and that would allow you to own the customers and actually shift the balance of power between different exchanges. But the fact that now, in hindsight, you are part of these exchanges, how does that sort of equation change, right? Because the power of what you were doing was in the sense that you were trying to kind of create efficiency across multiple exchanges.
Yeah, like I guess like that's something that people often discuss, a conception that like we are part of OpenSea and like will bias OpenSea in some sense. The thing is that like even if we are part of OpenSea, we run as a separate operation. And the thing is that,
But I mean, that's a bit
yeah,
unusual,
like,
right? Like, why would
yeah, still, like, but the thing is
aggregator
that,
owned by an exchange want to route our orders to another exchange?
yeah, like the thing is that like our product only works if we can get the best deals. The thing is that if you try to push users to a deal which might
Yeah,
not be best for the users, but like best for your parent company, then that doesn't make sense. So, like,
yeah,
yeah, like there's always a point to make that, okay, like that might increase the revenue, but the thing is that it's much better for the marketplace to learn from the aggregator like in a much better way, and like
yeah.
maybe incorporate like some features on the marketplace itself and all. So like the thing is that uh, it all like from OpenSea standpoint, like acquiring Gem is also like a good thing in terms of that like they have like a hedge on both the sides in terms of like if the market, because marketplaces like usually uh, have a tendency to have like a power law distribution in terms of like, for example, you can see Amazon has like the most share, and like then there's like a lot of other marketplaces who have like exponentially smaller amounts of shares. So like that's like one kind of scenario that most people are familiar with, and there could be like a second scenario where there are some like uh, couple of marketplaces who might have competing shares. So like in both the scenarios, like OpenSea has some sort of hedge because like they now both they have like both the aggregation layer and also the marketplace layer. So like that's one of the things. Uh, but
Understood.
yeah, I can like dig deeper like if you have like any specific questions there.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think the second question was that, the marketplaces that you are building is very sort of generalized, right? And there's been
Mhm.
some talk of verticalized marketplaces. How do you see this sort of generalized marketplace, which has got all NFTs versus like a more gaming focused marketplace versus a more music focused marketplace? I mean, how do you see this industry kind of evolving in the future, in versus like, these different verticals that are emerging and going forward?
Yeah, I guess like there's I haven't thought a lot about it in a structured way, like, but a way to think about it is in like two ways. So, like, first is in terms of like how powerful the execution is, in terms of like how cheap the execution might be. So, for example, OpenSea like started as a general marketplace, and like it's still a general marketplace, but with Seaport protocol, they have tried to create a lot of things that revolve around the current market. So like mainly the PFPs, which are normal ERC 721 standard tokens. So a lot of functions that they have on the contracts are very much tailored to those specific use cases. So one of the things that you can think about, even in the journal marketplaces, like they're trying to specialize some of the things in terms of like just making things cheaper and like trying to create hotspots, like trying to create functions around the hotpots, which basically Gem also did from the start, where it just start like specific contracts for specific cases, so that like it's very cheap to execute a specific kind of trade. So like this is like one of the parts of the thing, but like this is more of a protocol level thing. So like it can be cheaper, but the thing is that it also the product is also about like what information, off-chain information that you show, right? So like, for example, if you come to the gaming NFTs, so there's a lot of stuff that's revolving around specific games. Uh, so I guess like I don't remember the marketplace name, but like there's a game called Zedran, and a specific gaming specific marketplace just started with that, like
Yeah,
creating some specific uh, tools around it in terms of like tracking the prices and like specific statistics about like which assets have made like better returns on like
yeah,
and on which different criteria. So I guess that level of specialization only can come up with like if you're trying to focus on a specific industry. So like that's something I guess like of course like generalized marketplace will be vulnerable with, because it's just like uh where you see Craigslist, right? So like they started with
yeah,
the generalized thing, and like yeah, eventually each part of the product like sort of turned into a separate industry. Like I guess like that will still apply to like NFTs, because yeah, like that's where I told that like NFTs can be programmed into anything, and that's where like, the problem space is quite large. And I do believe that like there's a lot of stuff like VMeta and like very specialized marketplaces that will like catch on as the specific industry sort of like gain more momentum. So like if the P2E uh, like games like sort of catch on a lot, so like I guess like maybe OpenSea might struggle, and like specialized marketplaces gain a lot of benefit from that.
Understood. And when you kind of see the different categories of NFTs today, most volume tends to be focused on the profile pictures
Yeah.
and so forth, right? What have you sort of, when you kind of look at your data, have you sort of thought about what contributes to the extra interest and liquidity in that category versus other categories? I mean, is that just
Yeah, like
general interest and like the quality of teams that have launched the PFPs, or is there any other market structural reasons for that end of the market being extremely liquid, almost like dominating volumes, right, on OpenSea and most marketplaces?
I guess like it's just about how the simple PFPs are. The thing is that like whenever you create like a new technology, right? So the thing is that like you need to start with like something very simple. So this space is sort of like subsidizing whatever growth that will happen in future for like more complex use cases. The thing is that we don't
Interesting.
have enough standards defined like for P2E games, right? So like most of the stuff is like yeah. So like the currently if you see the gaming landscape, right? So like for example, Axie Infinity, they even created their own chain, like all
Yeah,
the stuff is customized, right? So like that specifically shows like how less standardized that space is, and like that's why you even go to a length where like you have to create your own chains. And this is like a very simple explanation that I uh, think about in terms of like why even DeFi didn't like had that many users, and like why NFTs might have like even more users, is because like after like the exchange, like normal like Uniswap and Aave kind of products, and like after that like it gets progressively very harder for like a normal retail audience to understand the product. But with NFTs, the problem is much more easier, because like the only thing that you have to analyze on PFPs is just the maybe the attributes and the rank. So as a
yeah,
trader, like I don't have to like think too much about okay uh like like how the options market would work and how the futures market would work. It's very simple. I'm like I just see the rank and I basically make a trading decision according to it. So like so yeah, that's one of the things why like profile NFTs are much more popular, because like first of all they're simple, and just in terms of like l- people are much more uh, uh yeah like like easily able to understand like what's going on. And
yeah.
eventually I guess like this all will lead because like this leads to a lot of money pouring into like more advanced products. And like I guess it's just like if you follow anything in the history, uh like nothing happens like in void, right? So like you have to uh so like innovation always needs like some subsidization. So like anything that happens like so like a lot of stuff that we use like in daily lives, like it was developed by NASA for like some very random project. So like yeah, this
Yeah,
is sort of in some ways similar, where this is very uh, a simple misconception that people have, that like okay, NFTs don't have a value and all. That's totally fine, but the thing is that all this innovation that we are doing today, and like what all the money that's being poured, and like that will turn into something very good down the line.
that's very interesting. That's a very good point. I never sort of thought of it that way. Uh, and then sort of question on the revenue model, right, of these project teams, because they take royalty of 2.5% from the marketplace sales, right? And in the case of, how sustainable do you see this revenue model for these teams, right? So the interest is there because people are trading it, and from the trading, you're obviously getting that royalty. How do you see like do you see like NFT teams sustaining because of this kind of revenue model from royalty, or you kind of see a different revenue model emerging going forward?
Yeah, I guess like this is a very debated topic for many reasons, because the thing is that people expect royalties to be part of the protocol natively, just because most of the use cases currently revolve around PFPs. But I do think that like if you have like a P2P kind of a thing, uh, you might not need like those things like natively in the protocol. But the thing is that, for example, what Seaport has done with their protocol now, where they allow you to specify any kind of fees to like any number of recipients. So I guess like those kind of models are much better, so that like it's quite agnostic in terms of like whatever use case you might want to build. So like you can even build like very complex uh, insurance products, or any kind of product where you might have like a lot of protocols involved in a single transaction, and you might have to pay fees to every one of them. So yeah, in that case, like that's not a single royalty, or like in that case, like there's a lot of different fees going to like different protocols. So uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I'm not sure like what would specifically happen to royalties. I think the best way to go forward might be to just generalize that concept to like an additional fees kind of layer, where you can just like define any fees to like any recipient.
Yeah, makes sense. And finally, I think we are probably in the last 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Last minute actually. Any thoughts on the market in terms of like the NFT market has been a bit quiet? Do you see sort of volumes coming back in terms of the footfalls you are seeing on your product? Any thoughts in terms of any directional thoughts that you're seeing in terms of when you look at your customer data?
Yeah, like it has been like a up and down kind of a thing, and to be honest, like it's hard for us to track the market like just on our product, because uh, from the Seaport launch, like things change a lot. But
Yeah,
I think like it's even better if we go into a bear market, because like then yeah, like people might get some time to like rethink about like whatever we have learned in like past 1 year. And yeah, I guess like there's like enough good teams like have good enough funding to like last for a couple of years and come back with like something that much more better.
yeah, sure. Awesome. Great. Vasa, thanks for doing this, and thanks everyone for joining. I hope to see you again. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Have a nice day.